Why does English spelling suck? You're about to find out. Hello guys, this is Michael from the IELTS Grind, and today we are going to be talking all about English spelling. Specifically, why it sucks and what you can do about it. Wait until the end and you will have a great resource that you can start using to help fix this terrible, terrible problem. So, let's first dive into why English spelling sucks. Why does English spelling seem so irregular? Actually, 75% of English spelling is regular. It just feels more irregular. It feels more weird because a lot of our most common words, words that you hear all the time, use that irregular spelling. Okay? So that's it. It's not as weird as it sounds, but to really dive into it, we've got to do a history lesson. And Philip isn't here to help you. So guys, first things first, English is actually one of the easiest languages to learn, aside from the terrible spelling, which native speakers even have trouble with sometimes, because of the fact that English was conquered a bunch of times by a bunch of different peoples who speak different languages, and then because their overlords were speaking a different language, the complicated bits of English were kind of chopped off and thrown away. So let's take a little walk down memory lane with this. First of all, English is a Germanic language, okay? German and English are cousins. There was Proto-German, and then that turned into Old German and Old English, okay? Old English and Proto-German was spoken by the Anglo-Saxons, who were actually a Germanic tribe. You can see in this map where the Angles, the Jutes, and the Saxons all came from. So, before this point, Rome, you know, that place way down there, Rome actually had colonized southern England, the island of Britain, okay? It was originally a Celtic community, okay, a Celtic people that had incorporated, you know, Roman life. So the languages that they spoke at that time were Latin and Celtic, okay, Gaelic. And then the Roman Empire collapsed. The Romans who were living there ran away, and then the Angles and the Saxons and the Jutes all invaded England, okay? Now, this is actually an interesting bit of history. There's not that many Gaelic words that we have in English that came from this time period, which implies it was not a very nice invasion. Basically, the Anglo-Saxons, who became the English, pushed out the native people and, you know, drove them into Britannia and Wales. Yeah, it was not pretty. But, so, that's about the time when Old English became the norm, okay? And this is a weird language. Like, if you ask a native English speaker to look at Old English, they would not be able to understand it. Work that comes from that period is Beowulf, okay? Did you guys ever watch that movie with Angelina Jolie? Not a great movie, but the story that was based on was from Old English, okay? Now, Old English came from about the 5th century, 450 AD, until 1066. But during that time, okay, which is a pretty sizable amount of time, more than 500 years, the Vikings invaded, okay? These came from Scandinavia, you know, Norway, Sweden, the Danes, okay? They came over and they conquered a ton of the island. And they spoke Norse, okay? They did not speak English. And as they were conquering, and as these languages were mixing, as both communities lived together, a lot of the more complicated parts of English were removed. You can read all about this in a great book called Our Magnificent Bastard Tongue, okay? Link down below. It's a great book, and it describes all of this in much more detail. So, that was the first time when English became a bit more manageable. The Viking occupation happened between 793 to 1066, and again, this was all Old English. In the 7th century, we have our first written records of Old English. After that, in 1066, I keep saying that year because that was the Norman invasion. That's when the Normans, who spoke French, they were actually Vikings that had conquered Normandy, which is an area in France, and then adopted the French culture. So really just another kind of Viking that spoke French, came over and conquered all of England. And what ended up happening was the royalty, the nobility of England, all spoke French because they were Normans. And the people who worked there all spoke English, okay? And this ended up with some weird things happening, okay? Do you guys know pork? Delicious, right? But what do you call the animal? Pig. That's right. Pork and pig. Pork is a French word. Pig is the English word. Because the animals were raised by the English, they kept the English name. But once they slaughtered the pig and made bacon and brought it up to the nobles, it was pork. Okay? The same thing happened beef and cow, lamb and mutton. Okay? So this is where we start to see a lot of French words starting to enter. Also, by the way, a bunch of Norse words had come in during the Viking occupation earlier. Those are many words with K, like sky. Okay? The KY sound, that all came from over there, along with many others. By the way, guys, at the end of this video, we're going to be having a list. Right here, we'll see the beginnings of it, from Norse, from Norman French, okay? We're going to have a huge catalog of words to help you understand where they come from. Because you see, in America, we have this weird tradition where we have spelling quizzes. Spelling bees is what they're called. And native speakers try to show off that they are smarter than other people by spelling difficult words. And my girlfriend actually won a spelling bee back in elementary school. She was an excellent speller. And these are some pretty competitive competitions. Like, the competition is fierce. And people take these very seriously. So people study really hard, and they have particular ways to work with learning how to spell words so that they win these competitions. The way that they do that is they find the origin of the word. Because words that come from the same place have the same spelling So you will see that there are going to be some words from Greek in the list at the end that have the same spelling, and that's why they're spelled so strangely. Okay? The same is with Latin, and French, and Norse. Okay? Now, back to history. So, the Normans, the French-speaking Normans, conquered England, okay? And they conquered it from 1066 to about the 15th century. During this time, it's called Middle English. Now, Middle English looks weird to people who speak modern English, but we can still usually see what it means. We can usually still read it and understand what it says, even though there's going to be a lot of weird words, a lot of really weird spellings, and some weird phrases, okay? This is called Middle English, and Chaucer, Geoffrey Chaucer, wrote during this time. I studied Middle English in university, and it was a lot of fun, but it was really weird, okay? There's a lot of things that are spelled strange in modern English that are only strange because they're in modern English without any changes. So a lot of silent E's came from this time period because they would say all of the E's. Like come, C-O-M-E, is come. Like, it's weird. All those E's at the end, they used to pronounce in Middle English. That's why they're there now, is because we never got rid of them, okay? All right, guys. So after the 1500s, it became modern English. And there was a lot of lost pronunciation, like their silent E's, where it was pronounced before and it wasn't anymore, but the spelling was the same. Another example of that is the K in night. Okay? You used to pronounce the K in a lot of words, but now they're silent. So let's jump into, by the way, Shakespeare was using modern English. He was not using Middle English, even though it sounds super strange. A lot of weird spellings come from way back when there were French scribes and printers who would spell things however they felt because there was no standardized spelling. Okay? So a lot of things were spelled weird because they weren't standardized. People had to put something down and they spelled it with a Y or an I, and it would change, sometimes in the same document. Okay? But it was okay because not many people knew how to read. Also, in the 16th century, so this is when modern English is being used here, academics, so people in universities, wanted to make English more educated sounding. Okay? English wasn't a very prestigious language. So what they did was they took Latin words and also Latin grammar rules and fit English into them. It was weird. Here are a couple examples. Debt and doubt and salmon and soldier were all words that used to be spelled phonetically. That means the way that it sounds, but it wasn't fancy enough, so they added some letters to make it look more Latin. I know, terrible. Also, there were some pronunciation changes, as I mentioned before, that resulted in a lot of silent letters. A few more examples. A lot of scientific words tend to be Greek or Latin in their roots. Okay? So this is if you're going to the sciences and you're learning some words like iron, Fe, that comes from the Latin for iron. On the periodic table, it's Fe. You can see here. That means iron. What's the connection? Fe comes from ferrous, which is Latin. Weird, I know. So there are a ton of scientific words that have Latin and Greek roots. If you organize them in a vocab notebook, you can mark them down. And as I said at the end, we will be giving you a great list to start with, and then as you learn more words, you can add them to your respective lists. Many academic words came from Norman French because in the beginning, university culture was in French. Okay? So if you take a French dictionary and you look through it, you'll see that a lot of words that they have are also in English, they're just pronounced weird. We have a lot of other words from French where we just kept the spelling and had a new English pronunciation. Champagne is a great example. So is casserole. I hope that's edited out. Casserole. There's a ton. Like I said, wait until the end and you will see the whole list. Finally, we sometimes just steal words from other languages. These are called loan words. Okay? Tsunami, gorilla, check. All of these are words we've just taken from other languages. Same with shampoo. So, this is why English spelling sucks. Because it has a very sordid history where a lot of terrible things happen to this nice language. There aren't many hard and fast rules. Well, there are. Remember, 75% of English has regular spelling. However, to get around this, organize the words from where they come from. You don't need to memorize where it comes from, but it will help you start to see patterns that will make it easier to learn new words and how to spell them correctly. Remember, on the IELTS exam, especially the listening, you need to spell things correctly. If you have the right word, but it's misspelled, I'm sorry, that doesn't count. I know it sucks. Just as I promised, here is a very long list of words. As you can see, they're organized. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. There's also a link down below that will bring you to PDFs of these. Print these out and add to them. When you find another word that you can't spell well, try to add it to this list. You don't need to do every word, just the ones that you're having trouble spelling. As with anything, practice, practice, practice. That's the best way to get around it. This has been Michael. I'm sorry that there isn't an easy answer. English language sucks sometimes, but I hope you found this interesting. As I said before, Our Magnificent Bastard Tongue is a great book to learn more about this. I look forward to seeing you later. Peace.